for joining us for another workshop for supervisors of student employees here at ASU. We're going to give it just another moment or so, make sure everybody has a chance to get logged in, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our session today. All right. I do want to be mindful of everyone's time this afternoon. So again, thank you all so much for joining us today. Today we have Christina Carpenter with us, and she's going to be discussing a little bit about federal work study and what that means for us as supervisors to student employees. What do we have to do with that? So Christina does have a presentation prepared for us this afternoon, but we'll have plenty of time at the end for any questions or comments, or if you have your own experiences you want to share. Again, we're big about sharing our own experiences and resources if you have resources to help you with this topic. So with that being said, Christina, thank you so much for being here this afternoon.
Right, thank you very much. Hi. Yes, my name Christina Carpenter. I've been with student employment here for just a little over 5 years. So I'm pretty much kind of the face, so to speak, of the department. I'm usually the one people reach out to when they have any questions. And I'm also the one who primarily does the awarding. I'm usually the one who processes the federal work study requests and awarding and things like that. So as you can see here, I'm referring more to, I'm kind of assuming everybody knows what the federal work study program is. So I'm going to be focusing more on how do the hiring managers, how you request it, how it works in the system and with tracking, more than I am just explaining the program. So starting off, as you can see, for if it's sorry, I always forget. So to start is like student employees, when we hire them to federal work study recs, if it is a work study only, like if it's coded with the split code and it is set to be just a work study only position, we automatically, as those students get hired on, we review those and we give them their awards. Otherwise, if you have students that are federal work study and you're needing them to be awarded, you have to reach out to us for that. So generally the way right now that you would be able to find out if a student is even federal work study eligible to reach out to us is when you run validations. Once upon a time, we did have a report that you could run in analytics, but that went away with our the changeover to Workday. And at this time, I don't know if we're going to get an equivalent thing. So pretty much the only way that you can discover if a student is federal work study eligible is you run validations. And validations will at that time give you a blurb in their results on whether the student qualifies or not. And if you do see that they do qualify, and you can see here, students, requests can be made one of 3 ways. Either y'all reach out directly to us, you can advise the student to contact us directly. They can either send an email, although we have an online federal work study adjustment form, which I have the link provided right there that you can give the students. Sometimes it's faster if the student requests it. Sometimes it's faster if you use our work list, which I'll talk about here on the next slide. Oh, no, it's not a slide after. Oh yes, right here. We do have a Google Doc. The Google Doc is what you will use, departments use to submit their requests for students. Later on in the document, I should have a link to it. But if you ever email me, if you need the link, I always have the link to the document in my signature. So it's really easy for me to send out. So as for monitoring, we do not provide the monitoring for balances. What we do is we advise, we have some information here, is for departments to keep track of the federal work study as the students receive their paycheck. Again, maybe we'll have some tools coming up in Workday. We haven't been given anything definite otherwise, but generally what we do is we advise as a lot of departments, they'll do a Google Doc where they run calculations. So they just input the students' earnings. They start with what their award is, input their earnings, and then it will automatically deduct. And so you can have like kind of a running tally of how much that they have left. You do have to be a little careful though, because sometimes there will be students who have more than one job, and it is possible they could have more than one federal work study job. I would try to keep the communication with the student open, or if at any time you have any questions about it, shoot an email to us and we can do a check in the back to see, get a more accurate representation about how much federal work study is being used by the students to help with your budgeting. Oh, sorry, that's my boss. And here we go. And this is the federal, this is what the Google document will look like. Right here is the link for we also have a link right here. I can send you I can send a PowerPoint to anybody if they want it after this presentation. You don't need special permissions to go into it. You just have to be logged into your Google account. You can request an award. If you feel your student's running low on money, you can submit a request to see if we can increase their federal work study award. Right now, what we've been doing for new requests is we award $6,000 or up to $6,000 to a student to use to give them to go through the entire academic year. So when you submit requests, they're for the whole year. You don't do submissions per semester. And so that's why if you feel if your calculations are going lower, submit the request and we'll see if we can increase. You'll also use the notice for at the end of the year for spring going into summer. So if you're going to be having students continuing into the summer, we'll need to have a new request for that because summer is a completely different federal work study bucket. Academic year does not roll over into it. So we have to treat it as a brand new thing. The thing that the document is not for is for doing estimate requests or initial requests to see if the student is even eligible to begin with. We get dozens of requests a day. We get thousands of federal work study requests overall. And so if we also have the estimates coming in along with the awards, it can bog things down and it can really delay us getting back to hiring managers for their actual awards. Oh, this was from I apologize. I don't think I meant to put this slide in. But this is information though that could help with your tracking. As always, make sure your reports too are updated. That also helps us on our end. So that way, if we have any other questions or something comes up with federal work study, we need to talk to the department or the reports to about, we can have that information. And these are some of the things that it relates to. Like recently, we had to send out for, we just did last week, was sending out graduation notices for federal work study students. So hiring managers will be aware that their students are about to graduate, and they would either have to reach out to confirm if they're going to, they've changed their mind and they're continue on, or to start making arrangements for having the students terminate at the end of their end of the semester. And as always, you can reach out to us at any time. Our main email box is seo@asu.edu for any reason at all, you can reach out to us. And as always, the biggest thing to help with getting quicker responses is providing us their ASU ID and the student names so we can go ahead and look them up before we respond. And this is pretty much about to the end of it. Does anybody have any questions? I'm sure I've probably missed something.
Christina, I think most of us are familiar with what federal work study is, but
Mhm.
as a student employee supervisor, can you just talk a little bit about, I guess, what I would need to know as a supervisor in terms of um, hiring a federal work study student? Like, do I have to use federal work study if they are federal work study eligible? Is there a way to kind of split that where, my department pays part of their hourly wage and we use federal work study for the other part? If I don't have a budget to hire a student employee, but if I find a federal work study eligible employee, is that a way to kind of work around so that I'm still able to hire someone, but it doesn't have to come out of my budget?
Part of it will always come out of your budget. The split is for 70-30. So there's no federal work study where federal work study covers the entire part. So you would have to have at least some budget. The department, if I believe department is 30%, and then federal work study will cover 70% of the student's wages. So you have to keep that in mind. You do have to still have a budget, but if it's an hourly position, you can choose to use the federal work study or not. It is an optional because hourly recs are set up for where federal work study or not federal work study, they can work that job. However, again, especially if it's a federal work study only job, the departments will still have to have a budget or money to allocate for the hiring those student workers.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I guess another question I have is, since this is a part of their FAFSA, right? So a student fills out their FAFSA and that's how they qualify for a federal work study. Do they have to be meeting the same requirements in terms of like satisfactory academic progress to remain eligible for federal work study?
Yes, the students must be meeting staff, SAP. Sorry, SAP. Yes, students must be meeting SAP, or they can be on probation. However, if they are not meeting SAP, then their award gets canceled and they do not qualify.
Thank you.
Throat's a little dry. Oh, yes. Asuka? Yeah.
Hey, I thank you so much for this session. It's super helpful. I have a question. I'm not too familiar with all of the federal work study, to be honest. So I do have some student employees, and then I don't like necessarily hire only the federal work study eligible, but I usually ask them when I hire them if they are federal work study eligible students or not. A lot of time they say maybe, like, I don't know, I'm not sure, or I think I am. But I guess my question is there any way that we can confirm if they're federal work study eligible student or not? And if so, is there any way we can find out how much they are awarded?
Um, Students can find out. They can submit a request as that I had. Oops, not there. Where's my gallery? Uh, let's stop share. I'm gonna stop the share for a moment. Um, but there is an online form that the students can use to submit a request to us, and we can let them know then whether or not they qualify for federal work study. If we can actually even then give them an estimate at the time of their request. For hiring managers, though, unfortunately, like I said, right now, the only way is if you want to consider the students is you need to run validations on them, and it will let you know at that time if they do qualify. And then you would go through the step of if they qualify and you are going to hire them, you then send the request to us, and then we process it and give them a live award. But as far as, unfortunately, like I said, we used to have a way where you could check for their eligibility before starting the hiring process, but that's gone away to right now with Workday coming up.
Thank you.
I don't know if this is the official way to check, but I have an academic advising background. But I always used to see a federal work study award estimate under a student's finances tab. So Christina, correct me if I'm wrong, but like that could be a quick way just to see if they're even eligible before kind of moving forward with
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, because some awards are automatically placed or estimates are placed. Like you'll see that with the Obama students. They always get a federal work study estimate automatically assigned to them. And usually what we'll do, they get they always start out with 3,000 in awarding, but usually they tend to qualify for a lot more. So we increase their awards as they go. And I saw somebody ask a question. Because it also ties to for their scholarships. The scholarship awards, yes, those do affect the amount of federal work study that a student can qualify for. The federal work study is based off of need that a student would have after all of their other scholarships, federal work aid, federal aid, and stuff all totaled up. And once that's all totaled up, we see what they have remaining, and then that's where we pull our federal work study awards amount from. So sometimes if a student they get fully packaged, they've accepted the aid they want, and we give them a federal work study award. It's not uncommon for students sometimes to come up after the fact and say, oh, I got offered another scholarship, or I want to take out a loan. And then that means at that time, in order to free up the space for them to get said loan or scholarship, we then have to reduce their award. So FAFSA is kind of like I guess you'd say almost a living, breathing type of form. So a student's federal work study eligibility can sometimes change in the middle of the semester, depending upon what happens with their FAFSAs. And when that happens, unfortunately, when that happens, we don't always are able to notify the departments. So again, that'd be one thing you'd reach out to us from if you suddenly notice their federal work study is stopped. Oh, yes. Amy?
Hi, we have a program here in Barrett where we hire work study students. It's my first time working with the program, so I've gotten a lot of interesting questions. But one of the situations that came up is the student thought that they got their hourly rate and the federal work study award somehow. And I was really concerned. I'm like, well, I need to make sure my communication is spot on. But I was just wondering, like, what does the student themselves know about their federal work study award? Because I want to be able to communicate effectively with students that we're bringing onto this program, but it was very surprising. They thought they got the $3,000 that they saw on their financial aid package plus the hourly rate. So they found out they didn't get both. They resigned from our position. So
yeah, no, unfortunately, I know that a lot of students believe that whenever they apply for federal work study, they think federal work study is paid out the same way as like a scholarship or a loan, and that they'll just get a lump sum of money if they find a job. And so basically how we have to explain it is their federal work study is basically it's their paycheck. They get their award doled out to them as they work. That's where their money is coming from. That's how they're getting their money. And then they will see the total amount of federal work study they earned, then reflect on their FAFSA at the end of this at the end of the academic year. So, because at the end of the day, their award is what they earn. So what they see. So when they see 6,000 on their FAFSA, it's not a guarantee they're going to get that entire 6,000. That's just the amount of money that they have set aside that their paychecks can draw from.
And do they get some kind of communication when they get that award in their financial aid package, how that award works?
Yes, they
I'm
would be
trying to
getting
figure out
email.
where the miscommunication came up.
Yeah, no, whenever the awards are placed and we send out they get a notification on their FAFSA and they do receive that information at the time.
Okay, cool.
But
Thank you.
sometimes they just,
Yeah,
again,
they don't
sometimes
read
they,
everything.
yeah, sadly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Christina, there's another question in the chat asking, is there any way to check the current student worker's source of pay?
The way that you can check it, I'm not sure exactly how many permissions a hiring manager has on what they can see in PeopleSoft, but they should be able to, I'm trying to remember the screen that they would see it. I don't know if that would come up on their paycheck or if that's tied to their position number. That's a good question. I'm not sure the answer. I apologize. Especially since that's probably something that's going to be changing up in Workday.
Probably,
I,
yeah.
in the past, as a workaround, just look them up in Outlook and you can see if they have another job. Now, you don't know whether they're utilizing federal work study, but likely that they are. So I realized I need to ask that as an interview question, especially because my program targets federal work study students, because then the amount that they have is split between 2 jobs. And so they might not be able to work for us as long as we're hoping. And well, we work with our HR person just for those reports to see, but I don't know if they have 2 jobs, if the money is split equally between the jobs or how that works.
The money is pretty well, yeah, I guess, well, it's not really split equally so much as that it's based upon, so like say one job is like a 20-hour job and then the other one's like a 5-hour job. The 5-hour job, and if they're both federal work study, not as much is going to be paid out to the 5-hour one because they won't be making as much money as the one that's in the 20-hour job. So they'll still get a little, a little bucket going to that second job. So it's not like, so it's not like saying, 3,000 is always going to be for one job and 3,000 is going to be for the other job. It's just partitioned out to what their paychecks are.
Christina, going back to checking the source of pay, you mentioning the hiring managers and not sure how many permissions a hiring manager might have. Is that something like a department HR manager might be able to assist us as supervisors with?
Yes, the department HR would be able to determine those.
Awesome. That just brings me, I just want to share one of my own experiences that I've had when it comes to federal work study. I was a student employee during my undergrad here with ASU, and I never knew what federal work study was. I don't think it applied to me. So therefore, I just never really learned anything about it. And then when I became a supervisor, one of the first students that I started supervising, he came up to me and he was like, "Hey, I have federal work study. Why am I not utilizing that?" And I just stared at him so blankly. And I was like, "I don't know. What are you talking about? Am I supposed to do something as your super?" Like, I was so lost. And I went back and forth with my own department HR team. And I was like, "Hey, what do we do here?" Like, the student obviously knows what he's talking about more than I knew what I was talking about. But long story short, it came out again because of FAFSA, and he wasn't eligible at the time, but then he was getting married. So he was like, "No, I should qualify." But then again, with FAFSA, he had to wait until the next fiscal year, academic year, the next cycle to have that apply. But good to know that our HR departments should be able to help us a little bit more too, if needed.
Yeah, they should. Yeah, and that's another thing of students, so if they ever have questions or if they say, "Oh, I should be getting this," you can always have them reach out to us for us to double check, because sometimes, like one semester, a student can qualify for federal work study, no problem. But then due to changes the next semester, they suddenly no longer have any need on their FAFSA, and so their federal work study is canceled. Things are always changing. So it's always good. So if you ever have questions, or again, if a student has questions, always refer them to us.
Absolutely. And one more question, Christina, and you may have touched on this a little bit, but for clarification, is the federal work study estimate, so you saying like $3,000 that a student might have applied to their account, is that based off a certain number of working hours per semester, or is that just in total? I know like you were just saying they could be working 2 jobs type thing, but is there any account of how many hours they might be working?
Nope, the award is based solely on what they qualify for. Because at the end of the academic year, we then count up how many hours they worked and how much pay that they got. It's not tied to the amount of federal work study they get is not tied to how many hours they work. It's based solely off their need on their FAFSA.
Wonderful. And then just another question in the chat, but if you had anything to add to it, Christina. I know you'd mentioned that, yes, they do get some type of communication when those awards are hitting their account. But just again, somebody had asked, do the students get notified if they qualify or not, even if maybe they didn't qualify, even after they had applied for it? Or how does the student find out? How do they know?
Really, the only way that they can know is if they have to submit a request to us. Sometimes financial aid will let them know if they're talking with their financial aid counselor. They can they'll let them know if they qualify, and they bring up to the student that federal work study is an option for them. So that's another way they can find out is through financial aid. I'm trying to think, I can't remember if whenever you run validations, if the student gets a notification. No, okay, oh, the student does not. Yeah, the student doesn't get a notification when validations run. So basically they have to reach out to us or financial aid to see if they qualify.
Do they see it on their award letter?
Huh?
Do they see it on their award letter?
Yes.
And then that's on their my ASU. So they can look,
Right.
or they also can look at their HR, because we can look it up too.
Yeah.
So I guess one of those where student has to look a little bit. It's not just handed right to them. They do have to pay attention to their my ASU and tabs there.
Yeah, they do.
Christina, just another thing that's coming to mind, and one thing with Work Plus, as I mentioned at the beginning, all about resources and sharing resources, sharing experiences that we have. ASU has a ton of resources. There is a resource for just about everything. Are there any specific resources available to help federal work study students balance their jobs with academic responsibilities, or talking points that you could share with supervisors to discuss with those students?
Unfortunately, we really don't. They can usually reach out. Sometimes they can reach out to career services. Career services does advising, and they would probably be able to give them help on that. Again, we can try to give them a little bit of help. Yeah, I'm sure there might be a resource for that, but that is something, unfortunately, that our office in particular doesn't provide.
No worries. I just thought I would ask. Wouldn't hurt to ask.
No, there's no dumb questions.
Does anybody else have any questions for Christina or experiences that you would like to share if you supervise students that utilize federal work study, or tips that could help some newer supervisors?
Christina, I kind of going along Abby's last question. Our team, the Work Plus team, we're always wanting to offer resources and support to our student employment supervisor community. Is it okay if our team potentially creates like a quick one-pager with some facts around federal work study and what a supervisor would need to know, kind of based off of what you've shared throughout today's presentation?
Oh, yes, please. Go ahead. That would be excellent. No, any resources you guys want to create, flyers, websites, anything like that to give out to the students to say, hey, here's the program, here's where you can get information, or, give our contact, or to let them know, hey, there's a place you can go online where you can submit a form, and they'll let you know whether you qualify or not. So yeah, no, if you want to create your own resource to give the students, that's highly encouraged.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So just for this group, and we'll share it in our Slack channel and everything too, but just know that that's something Abby and I will start to work on. We'll kind of take the questions from today's call and put together like a resource sheet or tool for you all to refer back to just with some of the questions that were asked today.
And if you'd like me to take a look over that sheet before you send it out, just let me know, reach out, and then I can see if there's anything I can add to it that somehow got missed.
That would be great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yes, federal work study awards have shifted. We try to, what we've been doing is every academic year, as the pay has increased, so have we increased our awards. Like I said, I've been with student employment for about 5 years now. When I started, the maximum award we would give out to start would be $3,000, and pretty much every year since, we've increased it by an increment of 1,000. We were doing 4,000 last academic year. We did 5,000, and this year the base awards we've been giving has been 6,000. About that. So no, yeah, we do take that into consideration, and that's why we try to give the max amount of money set aside for the student that we can. You're welcome. Anybody else?
One last question that I just thought of, Christina, and again, understanding that departments or colleges may do things a little bit different depending on the college or department that they're in. Is it on the supervisor? So if I'm the hiring manager and I'm wanting to hire a new student employee, is it on my responsibility to indicate that I want this to be open for federal work study students to apply to? Or is that more so I would work with my HR team to do that? I know my HR team, they specifically keep all positions in our department to be open for federal work study, but is that something that we'd be specifically requesting to have? Or
yeah, that would be something you'd have to specifically request and make sure is set on the position number before our job is posted. Like I said, we have 2 different types of recs that we post. There's the recruitment type federal work study, which means only federal work study eligible students can be hired. And that's exclusive. Or there's the recruitment type hourly, and the recruitment type hourly, if you add the 7/30 split at the time you set up, then you can pretty much hire any type of student you want. So if you hire on an hourly or someone who doesn't qualify for federal work study, they'll get paid the hourly amount. And if you do end up hiring a student who does qualify for federal work study, then they will be having the federal work study paid out to them.
I think like when you open up your requisition, if
Right.
you know for sure you're not going to hire anyone that's not federal work study, you need to let your HR staff know. So when they open up the rec, all the applications that you receive will be only federal work eligibility. There won't be anybody else. Everyone else will be declined. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of departments might leave it open. So if they don't get enough applicants, that they have the choice of not taking someone who's getting federal study.
thanks for those insights, Tammy.
Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah, I love working with Christina. She is amazing. She is my resource. So
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, nope. I'm always here for everybody. Like Tammy says, please use me as a resource. I'm always happy to answer any questions or do anything I can.
With that being said, does anybody have any final questions for Christina? If not, if you need to kind of sit with this information and look it over a little bit more, like I mentioned in the chat, I will be sending a follow-up email to everyone on the call today, including Christina's slides that she went through. That way you all should have access to that Google form that she was referring to, as well as their office email at large and Christina's email, as well as she just said, using her as a resource for you too. Well, thank you again, Christina, so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
It was great to hear from you and your insights that you have with federal work study. Just want to remind everybody too, we do have a supervisor networking happy hour this Thursday afternoon, I believe from 5 to 7, and we'll be at the downtown Phoenix location. So if you're downtown, please come join us. It looks like Amanda just put the registration link in the chat. Please let us know if you're planning to come so that we can give the restaurant a heads up on a head count. But of course, it is a happy hour, so come join us as you can, leave as you need. But thank you all for being here this afternoon. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to Amanda or I directly, or utilizing that supervisor Slack channel. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having me.